I don't think it's quite the same.
I think it's the same.
I think that more comes down to, again, is just like the whole thing about people that are more in the know can sense the intention of the remake. If here's with remakes, if it's the studio's idea to do the remake and they find somebody, typically those remakes are the ones that I think people complain about. Whereas there are remakes that you may not realize that are remakes, or that are just remakes, but the people who wanted to do the remake is the person who is also the one creating it. So like an example would be, what was that movie from a couple years ago that Guillermo del Toro did?
I don't know.
Nightmare Alley.
Okay.
That was a remake from a 60s movie.
Yeah.
But it's a remake, but he came up with he took the idea, decided to turn it into something different, build on it in a different way, in his own way of doing things. Like it was a full on it was his baby, but he just took from what someone did before with with the original idea.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different, I feel like, of a remake, if instead of like the studio is like, hey, what movies do we have on the shelf from the 80s? Oh, this movie, it did really well. Do you think it would work nowadays? It might. All right, let's go try to find some directors to pitch on it now.
See, I don't have an issue with either of those two things.
I think I just have an issue with the conveyor belt mentality.
I mean, if it's good, does it matter?
Here's the thing: is most of the time they're just okay from what people say.
I mean, I think. See, I enjoy.
I want greatness, Jordan.
Yeah, like why do we always want
Nightmare Alley was
perfection?
fucking great.
But why do you always want perfection? I feel like if it's entertaining, if it's good, hey, that's a win in my book. Like I don't need perfection, greatness every single time I go to the movie theater. Like I just don't, and I think it's draining because you're gonna have this perception of movies just be like your perception of movies is gonna be bad now. Where for certain things like remakes, people are just gonna be like, oh, this remake's bad because it's not perfection, and they just try to remake the original, which I guess
I'm not the person to have the ability to have this conversation, but there is a level of a conversation regarding the art that's made and how it speaks to culture itself and the kind of like that circular motion back, where you kind of get a disconnect from. I can't have that discussion because I'm not, one, I've heard the discussion and I feel them. Two, I don't understand what the fuck people say when they're talking about it.
Yeah, I don't.
He gets into a whole like philosophical thing regarding like culture and art that's made. I can't really explain it.
Okay.
But there's like that's like a thing that people will bring up that actually have the ability to have the discussion, is regarding kind of like that circular feedback between the art that's made, what's pop culture, and how it affects culture currently versus how it will affect it in the future, which kind of leads this whole circle of like the films that influenced you as a kid, you end up being influenced by those and making films, and then those films influence the kids after you, which then influences them later when they make their films, and how you can end up losing some level of that whenever like this, like a studio system or corporation ends up just turning it into just SKUs, a barcode, not seeing it as that feed, like not seeing the art and how it affects culture itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Art,
I'm doing a horrible job explaining this.
I get it. I get what you're saying. But man, art and like influence and what's good art and all that is such a complicated.
Well, that's why I said I'm not the one capable of having this discussion.
No, I think it's complicated because who determines what's good art or not? Like that circular motion, I understand what they're trying to say, but like, why is that a good thing? Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I just want to know why does that need to be a thing?
So also with the discussion, it kind of ties in with another discussion that I'm also not smart enough to, or don't have the shit readily available to talk about, is the role of like the critic in social culture.
Yeah.
In a social culture, where it goes down to is like, fuck, I wish I've watched one of these discussions recently. That way I can kind of pull some shit from it.
Yeah.
But basically it's the effect of like the critic's role is to try to cause artists to push the envelope in a lot of ways past what generally works, if that makes sense, to try to find a new way of doing things. It's kind of like just a level of innovation involved.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Innovation, creates new things, new art. I get it. And you don't want to be stagnant.
Yeah.
I get it.
Because if the studio system had their way, they would just keep remaking the same shit without pushing things that they just know they can get a guarantee. If they could get a guarantee on profit, they would make the same movie over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. I understand that.
And I think that's kind of like I think most people don't really care. Most people just go, huh, this movie sounds interesting, and I'm not busy this weekend. I'll go watch a movie. Or I'll go take my spouse to go watch a movie, blah, 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 blah. They don't really look into like paying attention to every movie that comes out. What is this? What's a phenomenal movie? They don't necessarily care about the quality of the movie. They care about, will I be entertained?
Yeah.
And I think that's the majority. Whereas then you have like smaller niches where it's like they care more about the craft of it, or they care about how does this director break the rules but do it in a way that still makes the story great and makes it enjoyable without taking me out of the experience. Like there's levels of, it's kind of like most people when they get headphones, they go, ooh, bass good. And I can hear I can hear enough things where I think this sounds good. But then you'll have audiophiles who spend $8,000 on fucking headphones that require crazy preamps to even hear anything in.
Yeah.
Just because to them, they feel like there's another level of experience that it's like to add 5% more quality to the audio experience. They're willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a whole audio setup.
Yeah, I get it. And I'm open to have this conversation with anybody because I'm open. My mindset's open, or thoughts about this is open. But I feel like there are parts of the industry where anyone can be like, you can have this general sense of movies where it's like, I just want to be entertained. I don't really care. Or you can be like, I want to know everything of how this movie's made. I enjoy that part. You just have to find where you can, where that can like shine. Like if you're going to see a Marvel movie or going to see a big budget remake with that mindset, you're not going to be satisfied with the mindset of it has to be like perfection. It has to be, I'm like artist. I want to see how it's made. You're not going to be satisfied because it's not for you, you know? But there are other movies and like other places that are like that. Like I feel like I'm a person where I like the art. I like the writing. I like when things are written really good and creative and smart, and also like just being entertained. And I find places where that shines. And I'm satisfied with what I see because I don't have this expectation of everything needs to be one thing when I go places.
Well, that's your problem, Jordan. You want to be satisfied. Some people don't want to be satisfied. They want greatness.
I guess.